Alright, so we're going to be having a look at questions 1 through 5 in the multiple choice section. This is again from the 2020 HSC Advanced Maths paper. Now the multiple choice questions are usually not particularly interesting. You try and do them fairly quickly. You want to get them done right at the start. So you think about them a little, you select the answer you think is correct, and then you move on. Right? You never spend more than, say, a minute or so on each question. They're really not worth the time. You want to get onto the proper questions, which are the longer answer questions that have the actual maths in them. But we'll go through some of these. So which inequality gives the domain of this function? Well, we're told y is equal to the square root of 2x minus 3. Now, domain is x values. So we're thinking which x values can we put into this function and get a y value out. Now, we're not allowed complex numbers, so we must have under the square root must be positive. So this has to be positive. Now, this is actually our main condition here. So 2x minus 3 has to be greater than or equal to 0. Could be equal to 0 because the square root of 0 is 0, and that's a real number. So we just need to solve this. We'll add 3 to both sides. This will give us 2x is greater than or equal to 3. Divide both sides by 2. This will give us x is greater than or equal to 3 on 2. And this is going to be D. So D is the answer to question 1. And you just get 1 mark for having that correct. If you're not sure on a question like this, just guess. You can look at it. You don't even need to calculate it, actually. You can just look and you can see that the square root can't be less than 0. And then you can think, well, what makes it 0? It's 3 on 2. So you can get it from just looking, but this is how to calculate it. Now, question 2. This is a slightly longer question. We're told the function f of x equals x cubed is transformed to a new function g of x, which is x minus 2 cubed plus 5. This has a horizontal translation of 2 units followed by a vertical translation of 5 units. Which row of the table shows the directions of the translations? Okay, so we have 2 translations here, the minus 2 inside the brackets and the plus 5 at the end. Plus 5 shifts it up by 5. So we know this is up by 5. So this means the answer cannot be C or D, because that would be down. So it's either A or B. Now inside the brackets, a minus 2 shifts right by 2. This is a right by 2 transformation. This is the inside the brackets one is the slightly unusual one. Students often think minus 2 means to the left because negative numbers are on the left. But minus 2 is actually to the right and plus 2 would be to the left. So in this case we are moving 2 units to the right, 5 units up. So the answer is B. Now let's have a look at question 3. So here we have John recently did a class test in each of 3 subjects. The class scores on each test were normally distributed. The table shows the subjects and John's scores as well as the mean and standard deviation of the class scores on each. And we have a list of numbers here. Relative to the rest of the class, which row of the table below shows John's strongest subject and his weakest subject? So we really want to know his Z scores, or his Z scores here. Because the mean, the score doesn't tell you anything, really. You need to adjust it for the mean and the standard deviation to say, compared to everyone else, were you above everyone else or were you below everyone else? If the average is 50 and you get 50, you're right in the middle. If the average is 100 and you get 50, you're way behind. If the average is 1 and you get 50, you're way ahead. So the 50 doesn't really tell you anything in of itself. So we're going to calculate the Z scores. Now we can use a specific formula to do Z scores. The Z score formula is z is equal to x minus standard deviation over mean, sorry, x minus mean over standard deviation. So here, we can just calculate all of the z-scores. So the z-score for French is his score, 82, minus the mean, which is 70, over the standard deviation, which is 8. This is 12 on 8. This is 3 on 2, or 1.5. His z-score for commerce is 80 minus 65 over 5. This is 15 on 5. This is 3. And his z-score for music is 74 minus 50 over 12. So this is 24 on 12. This is 2. So actually commerce is his best. Then music is his second. And then French is actually his worst in this case. So the question asks us which was his strongest and which was his weakest. Well, his strongest was commerce and his worst was French. So the answer must be A in this case. Sometimes you can do these without calculating the order, just by looking at them if the numbers are quite simple. It's often best to calculate. So now we'll do question 4. So we have a standard indefinite integral. What is the indefinite integral of e plus e to the 3x dx? This is a slight trick question. E, as distinct from e to the x, is actually just a number. So when we're integrating this, we're integrating these two things separately. So this becomes e times x, and then the derivative of e to the 3x would be 3 e to the 3x. So the integral is going to be 1/3 times e to the 3x, and then we have to add a constant. So A is not possible, C is not possible, D is not possible, so the answer is going to be B. Now the last one in our current set, we've been given question 5. These graphing questions are sometimes really unusual, depending on the particular shape they give you. So we are asked which of the following could represent the graph. Well, the function for the graph, the equation is minus x squared plus bx plus 1. Before we even start, we know it has to be either C or D. This is a negative parabola. This is a frowny face. It's a downwards parabola because the x squared is negative. So it cannot be upwards. Then the question is, does the B shift it to the right or to the left? Now this is an interesting question. This is something which in theory you could just know, right? So you could have memorized how this works. If you haven't memorized this and you have some reasonable familiarity with the HSC course, you can use derivatives here. So we can find the derivative of this. We can say y prime is minus 2x plus b. The min or max occurs where this is equal to 0. This implies that the min or max occurs at the point where b is equal to 2 times whatever x is. Now, if you think about that, the b value has to be 2 times whatever x is. If x is minus 1, then b will be minus 2. If x is 1, then b will be 2. So we have if x equals minus 1, we get b will be minus 2. If x equals 1, b will be 2. Now the question tells us b is greater than 0. So b can't be minus 2. So the maximum cannot occur at minus 1, at x is minus 1. D is actually impossible. The maximum must occur when x is equal to 1 and b is equal to 2. Therefore, our answer is going to be C. Now this is also a kind of question that you can sort of memorize. You can memorize how changing the coefficients in a parabola change the graph. So you can say, oh, well, if the b value is positive in this case, it will move it to the right, or if the b value is negative, it will move it to the left, or stuff like that. That can be a bit risky because it doesn't always work completely nicely. Sometimes the functions move as a function of all of the coefficients, and then you end up in real trouble. But it definitely is the case that for this question the answer is C. It's an upside down parabola, and when b is positive, it's been shifted to the right.